Welcome. For many of you, this marks the beginning of your journey of discovery about not-for-profit management at Salem College. My name is Doug Borwick, and I will be your guide here. It is no secret that the movies you will be watching are just PowerPoint slides with narration. Feel free to hit pause on those rare occasions when you see something worth looking at longer. I would hope that there won't be too many instances in which you will be tempted to hit fast forward. So, with that introduction, let's begin. Our program at Salem is called Not-for-Profit Management. The use of not-for-profit is an intentional choice. Non-profit, the most commonly used term, implies that a lack of revenue is the defining characteristic of the sector. Not-for-profit, in contrast, focuses us on the mission-centered nature of the work. It also helps us highlight the many differences that exist between for-profit and not-for-profit management. But if we are going to be honest, we have to admit that there is no functional difference between non-profit and not-for-profit. We have just chosen not-for-profit for the reasons mentioned. And I'll have to admit that non-profit is easier to say. The world will keep saying non-profit to refer to this sector, and I will keep referring to it as not-for-profit so that we can have the important discussions about how to assist this sector in best meeting society's needs. In the United States, generally speaking, there are three broad categories through which we organize ourselves to get things done. The next three slides attempt to summarize them. The first is the government. Its constituency is the majority of the population. Its motivation is the public good. Its accountability is periodically through the ballot box, and its function is to manage the established order. My primary concern in these three slides is the accountability column. With the government, at least in theory, there is an objective standard of accountability. Whoever receives the most votes wins. Since the Florida presidential election in 2000, I've had to hedge my bets and say, insert joke here. Nevertheless, for our purposes, the theory of an objective standard for accountability will serve us, even though it may not hold up in practice. Next is the for-profit corporation. Its constituency is individuals, stockholders, those people who own the corporation. Its motivation is private gain, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with private gain. Its accountability is the balance sheet, and its function is to develop and provide goods and services. With respect to accountability, it used to be that I could talk about this as an objective standard. You could tell if a corporation was successful by looking at its balance sheet and income statement. However, just like the government, over the last few years, things have transpired that make us question that. Enron, WorldCom, fill in your own story here. Nevertheless, the theory that accountability in the for-profit world should be judgeable on an objective standard still holds true. And finally, we get to the not-for-profit world. Its constituency is the minority, and I need to explain that this is not minority in the sense we usually use the term in U.S. society. This means simply some subset of the total population that is less than 50%. The motivation is the public good. The accountability is through a mission statement, and its function is to provide services, develop ideas, and advocate for change. The purpose of all three of these slides has been to allow me now to turn to the accountability in the not-for-profit world and acknowledge that a mission statement, unlike the accountability in the for-profit world and in the government, is an abstract concept. There can be no objective measure of success. As a result, an argument can be made that management in the not-for-profit sector is inherently more difficult than in government or in the for-profit world. Before you make any decisions about what you actually do, you have to translate that abstract concept into operational plans. This will help you understand why later I will spend so much time and energy trying to convince you of the importance of planning in the not-for-profit world. This slide introduces some of the terminology used to describe the not-for-profit world. Third sector, you will understand as being the third after government and for-profit. Independent sector, the private public service sector, nonprofit sector, not-for-profit sector, voluntary sector, and in the international arena, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and civil society organizations, CSOs. We might like it if there was standardized terminology, but this is a relatively young field, and I don't anticipate such standardization in my lifetime, and probably not in yours either. The organizations with which we will be principally concerned are known as 501c3 corporations. 501c3 designates the paragraph of the federal tax code that authorizes the tax-exempt status of these corporations. It's at least moderately interesting to note that there are many other categories of not-for-profit corporation. In class, we will mention 501c1, c2, c4, c5, c6, etc., etc. But, as I said, our concern in this course is almost exclusively with 501c3s. The language you see on the PowerPoint slide is the language taken directly from the tax code that describes the kinds of corporations that can qualify for this particular sort of tax-exempt status. Since this course is required of arts management students, I always enjoy at this point asking if anyone sees anything missing from this list. The obvious answer, of course, is the arts. The way that the arts are included in 501c3 organizations is that they fall under education. And that's an important point for every prospective arts management student to know. Many find the language of the tax code a little odd. For our purposes in this course, the list of kinds of organizations that's found beneath that language will serve as our template. We will be looking at advocacy, arts, education, healthcare, religion, and social service organizations in particular. Foundations as a category is in parentheses because it is a subset of 501c3 that is very much unlike the others. Foundations are distinguished from the other forms of 501c3 in that they have large assets available to them and they have particular legal requirements in how they treat those assets. This, then, is the end of our introduction to the basics of not-for-profit management. I trust you all understand that you now know almost enough to be dangerous. I hope, for all our sakes, you will choose to learn more about the field.